Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've been keeping an eye on the greater Montreal property market, you already know it's in a major state of transition. But today, we're diving into Dollard-des-Ormeaux, or DDO, because it has a completely unique story. It's defined by stability, space, and a deeply rooted community vibe. So whether you're looking to buy your very first family home, planning to sell a property you've held for decades, or you just kind of want to understand the shifting dynamics of the West Island, we are going to break it all down for you. We'll be looking at the latest data, municipal updates, and the real on-the-ground market realities for 2026.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1, the DDO value proposition, 2, the 2026 market by the numbers, 3, neighborhoods and buyer profiles, 4, strategy for buyers and sellers, and finally, 5, calculating the welcome tax.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the DDO value proposition.
Dollard-des-Ormeaux never tried to be spectacular, it chose to be reliable. I mean, wow, that just perfectly captures the essence of DDO, doesn't it? While the broader island of Montreal market has seen these wild speculative swings and a recent rebalancing with single-family home prices bouncing all over the place, DDO acts like an anchor. Its housing stock is almost entirely made up of single-family homes owned by longtime owner-occupants. There's virtually zero speculation happening here. It's a market that actually absorbs economic shock rather than amplifying it, and honestly, that reliability is exactly what buyers are happily paying for in 2026. Let's look at the lifestyle pillars that are driving this rock-solid structural demand. First up, education. DDO offers some highly sought-after bilingual schools, like Westwood High, which gives families this really rare mix of top-tier English and French options. Then you've got the green spaces, specifically the massive 48-hectare Centennial Brook that literally has its own man-made lake, plus an incredible civic center and sports facilities. You know, it's a diverse city of over 50,000 residents, but it still somehow maintains that cozy suburban feel. And critically for buyers, these homes were mostly built between the 1960s and 1990s. That means you're getting generous lot sizes and proven construction that you just do not find in modern, tightly packed new developments.
Now, this brings us to a massive question for the West Island in 2026. Does the REM transit network actually affect DDO? The answer is a resounding yes, but in a really specific way. See, DDO doesn't even have a single REM station inside its own city limits, but it sits perfectly positioned to reap all the benefits from the neighboring Fairview, Point Claire, and Kirkland stations. This has practically changed the entire downtown commuting equation. Residents can now reliably zip downtown without having to park a car in the city no matter how bad the winter weather gets. The market has absolutely priced in this new reality, which makes DDO's location even more of a game changer.
Moving right along to Section 2, 2026 market by the numbers. Okay, so looking at the Centris data, it reveals a super active market right now. We're actually seeing supply grow. There's about a 20% increase in inventory compared to previous years, which is finally giving buyers a bit more selection. We saw 74 single-family sales in Q2, with a median price hovering between $777,000 and $819,000. Condos saw 52 sales, generally sitting in the mid-400,000s. What this tells us is that well-priced properties are still moving steadily, proving that the demand for DDO's family-centric lifestyle is completely intact. What you're seeing here is what we like to call a ladder of opportunity. You basically have this really accessible entry point with condominiums at a median of roughly $451,000. From there, as families grow, they can step up into the semi-detached market around $650,000, and eventually into those spacious, detached single-family homes at roughly $777,000. It's the kind of community where you can buy your first place and then upgrade over the decades without ever having to pull your kids out of their local schools. But here is the really crucial point on the data side. 39 days. That's the average time a single-family home sits on the market in DDO. When you stop and consider that the broader island of Montreal is seeing increased inventory and much longer selling periods, 39 days shows us an incredibly healthy velocity. If a house is priced right and presented well in DDO, buyers are absolutely jumping on it fast.
All right, Section 3, neighborhoods and buyer profiles.
You know, DDO isn't just one giant monolith. It has very distinct sectors. On one hand, you have the St. John sector over on the west side. It's defined by commercial hustle, walkability to restaurants and pharmacies, excellent transit access, and a really quick entry to Highway 40. But on the other hand, you have the Central West Park sector. This is your classic 1960s suburban nostalgia. We're talking wide lots, established canopy trees, and an incredibly quiet, rooted community vibe. Where you buy in DDO completely depends on the daily lifestyle you're looking for. So, who exactly are these buyers? Well, we're seeing three main archetypes driving the market right now. First, the bilingual family. They are drawn by that genuinely rare combination of top-tier English and French education in a single neighborhood. Second, the value-driven upgrader. These are folks leaving denser areas like Côte-des-Neiges or NDG because their family is growing and they realize that DDO offers them a full-size detached home with a backyard for basically the same price as an urban condo. And third, the West Island first-timer, leveraging that growing supply of $452,000 condos as their golden ticket into the market. If you are watching this, there's a very good chance you see yourself on this list.
Let's talk tactics in Section 4, Strategy for Buyers and Sellers.
Both sides of the table need a crystal clear strategy this year. For buyers, it's all about diligence. You absolutely must test your actual commute to those new REM stations to see how it feels. Also, because so much of DDO was built back in the 60s and 70s, you need to rigorously inspect for things like period electrical wiring or galvanized plumbing. And hey, remember that with a 20% bump in inventory, you finally have a little bit of negotiating leverage. Now for sellers, listen up. The days of aspirational 2024 pricing are officially over. You have to price based on recent hyperlocal comparables. And crucially, don't just sell your updated kitchen. You need to market the entire community lifestyle, sell the parks, the schools, the civic center, because that's what's actually opening the buyer's checkbook.
Now, both sellers and buyers need a quick reality check when it comes to city zoning. Under the newly adopted 2025 Urban Planning Program, 95% of DDO's territory remains entirely protected exactly as is. What that means is redevelopment is tightly concentrated along specific commercial boulevards. So sellers, don't market your quiet residential home on the promise of some future lucrative rezoning. The city is actively protecting its established residential neighborhoods. That is fantastic for preserving the quality of life, but it just means the value of the home is what it is today.
And finally, Section 5, Calculating the Welcome Tax.
Okay, so what's really interesting about the updated municipal rules is this brand new $200 special duty. Right off the top, almost every single property transfer in the city is now subject to this flat fee before we even start talking about the percentage brackets. It's a minor change, sure, but it is a really important one to add to your closing cost spreadsheet. Let's see how this builds with the actual 2026 brackets. As you can see, the tax scales up based on the value of the property. You pay a 0.5% on the first $62,900, and it steps up gradually from there. But I want you to pay close attention to that bottom row. Any value over $750,000 is now taxed at a top tier of 3%. Given that the median price of a single-family home in DDO is over $777,000, almost every single detached home buyer is going to get hit by this top 3% bracket for at least a portion of their purchase price. So let's actually do the step-by-step math together so there are zero surprises on closing day. Imagine you're buying a beautiful, upgraded home in the West Park sector for $1.15 million. First, you run the tiered brackets on the first $750,000 of value, which brings you to $11,860.50. Next, you take the remaining $400,000 that sit above that $750K threshold and hit it with that 3% rate. That's exactly $12,000. Finally, you add those two sums together, and don't forget to tack on that new $200 special duty. Your grand total for the welcome tax on closing day, $23,860.50. It's a pretty significant chunk of change and a perfect example of why you absolutely must have a precise budget.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. When you look at the 2026 market, with all its moving parts, new transit networks, and shifting prices, are you simply shopping for four walls and a roof? Or are you investing in a community built on a 50-year track record of reliability? Because for the families moving here, DDO isn't just some stepping stone. It's the destination. The mix of space, top-tier bilingual schools, massive parks, and undeniable community stability might be exactly the foundation your family's future requires. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the data, the neighborhoods, and the strategy. Now, the next move is yours.